Hey there, Painful Mass here. It's been a while. I want to revisit the problem of biblical interpretation, which was the subject of my first video and then several afterwards. My main contention has always been that you only have two choices if you want to use the Bible to justify Christianity. One of the choices is to be a biblical literalist and to take everything to be literally true. Now, if you take that approach, then I definitely have to give you a great deal of credit because you're actually approaching your interpretation of the Bible with some sort of consistency. If you agree that there are problems, though, like historical inaccuracies, contradictions, anachronisms, archaeological problems, and so on, like any reasonable person has to do, then you have to come up with a consistent way of weeding out what is reliable from what isn't. Moreover, you have to be able to justify this method of interpretation in a way that shows you are doing something more than just making up whatever is convenient. Now, this is exactly what I've said several times in other videos, so it shouldn't be new that this is was my position. I used to be obsessed with this problem, and I had essentially come to the conclusion that it couldn't be done. If you were being honest and consistent, then anything that makes you throw out inaccuracies in the Gospels would also make you throw out important details that you just don't want to throw out, like the resurrection. I was burnt out on this and never wanted to think about it again, but sadly, I've spent a ton more time thinking about this recently. I realized there's actually a third option that I wasn't giving, and it produces what I think is the strongest argument for Christianity possible, because it doesn't rely on literalism, which is easy to refute, or some sort of ad hoc interpretation, which is nothing more than your personal bias coming through. Now, the argument is from genre. If you know what genre the book in the Bible you're reading is, then you know whether it should be read as myth, or prayer, or history, or whatever. I know Theo Warner tried to point this out to me a year or so ago, but you haven't heard the rest of the argument yet, so don't jump and say, hey, this was already pointed out to you. So, this is sort of what I've been focusing my reading on recently. I've read Helm's Gospel Fictions, Talbert's What is the Gospel of the Genre of the Canonical Gospels, MacDonald's Does the New Testament Imitate Homer, and lots of other sources too. And what did I learn? Well, first off, it is still hotly contested what exactly the genre of the Gospels are supposed to be. Are they biography? Are they mythical biography? Are they Greco-Roman biography? Are they just pure myth? Are they blah blah blah, insert your favorite ancient genre of choice? People are making arguments for all sorts of things. But for our purposes, this does not matter. There doesn't seem to be a single serious scholar out there who is arguing that these are meant to be historical. Historical writing was a genre of the ancient world, and there's just no one arguing that this is what they are. The evidence is too overwhelming that these are not historical. The stories are structured to imitate stories in the Septuagint and Greek classics like Homer. The phrasing and details of the stories are clear fictional devices to teach theological points. We have evidence that the authors have absolutely no regard for writing true things because we know that they just changed the stories to suit their needs. On and on and on this evidence goes. I could do many videos just trying to convince you of this, but the experts are already in agreement. Almost all of the stories from the Gospels are meant to be read as fiction. This is not a controversial statement among New Testament scholars. Even the Jesus Seminar came to the conclusion that only about 18% of the sayings and events could possibly have even actually happened, but certainly less than that probably are true. Not only are the Gospels not reliable historical documents, but they just aren't even meant to be read that way. So here's my main point of this. If you want to convince me that Christianity is true, it is a non-starter to argue from the Gospels. To do so is dishonest and uninformed, so why would I then take anything you are about to say afterwards seriously? A much better approach is to try to argue for Christianity using true statements. So the first thing to do is to admit that the Gospels are fiction, and then proceed to argue from there. It makes for an infinitely more plausible argument, and it allows you to have a consistent way to interpret the Bible. I don't think this admission devalues the importance of what the Gospels are telling us theologically. It doesn't mean that Jesus was merely a fictional character. Certainly people like Bart Ehrman admit this, but also believe that Jesus really existed, that there was a historical Jesus. And I don't think it weakens the argument for Christianity being true at all. You don't need the Gospels to be historically true to make an argument for Christianity. As I said, I think this admission strengthens the argument because your argument will no longer be based on something that is so easily shown to be false. Admitting this point will also allow you to grow greatly as a Christian because you'll be able to see what the gospel authors are trying to tell you if you spend the time learning about this stuff. If you treat the Gospels as history, you'll totally miss the point of what they're even trying to tell you. So I guess the whole point of this is that this is my new position. I think there are now 3 possibilities. You are either a literalist, you have some inconsistent ad hoc interpretation in which you try to argue some of the stories are metaphorical and some are historically true, or you just say all of the Gospels are fiction and then proceed from there. Let's see what people have to say about that, because this is a rather new position for me, so I could be argued out of it pretty quickly, I think, if you provide something convincing.